Okay, I got the nod from Mr. Bergman to go ahead and get the show started, so we'll get started. If you still got some things you've got to do here, as I'm getting rolling here, feel free to move around, whatever, and get things done that need to be done. Welcome, first of all, to everybody to our Sauk Center High School Athletic Hall of Fame banquet to honor our class of 2019. My name is Brian Olson. I'll be emceeing tonight. I moved to Sauk Center in '83. A lot of the kids that are coming through and the Hall of Fame members, I had the good fortune of coaching or having in class or knew the families or something along the way. And after being now in Sauk Center for, I think it's 37 years, it's really, this is home for me now, and I'm just honored to be able to do this. I really am. As Bergie mentioned, I did 3 of the first 4, and it's been a privilege, and really I've enjoyed it every time. And I think it's an honor that they ask, and then the older I get, I'm thinking, yeah, shoot, nobody else wants to do it. So, but I really do enjoy it, and tonight, again, I'm looking forward to as well. We certainly want it to be an enjoyable get-together for everybody, so we don't want it to be stuffy by any sense. I don't normally dress up like this, but I told Mr. Westby to just kind of dress down, and I was hoping I could get a picture when I was dressed up more appropriately than him, but I see he came, all dressed up again. I had a list of thank yous. Mr. Bergman took care of most of them. There are a couple, I think. One is Bergie himself. We had an athletic director, Rick Fisher, that started the ball on this, and I think he ran it 1 year, maybe 2, and then handed it off to Mr. Bergman, and he's just done a great job of looking over this from that point forward. So he doesn't want to take any credit, and credit is due there. So that was one thing, Bergie, I want to say thanks for. Secondly, the adults might as well know, because he let the cat out of the bag right away. I'm retired now, and I found the suit today, and I didn't have a black belt. So I asked if he'd find a belt for me. So he brought one out here, and he just couldn't lay it aside. He had to tell all the kids. So all of you know I thank Bergie for bringing a belt for me tonight. And then lastly, I thank Bergie for lining up our music tonight. Rumor was we weren't sure if they were going to do that. And I guess TJ had agreed to get Uncle Joe and Uncle Izzy, and they were going to come up and do a little singing. So I'm so glad that Bergie got that lined up so we didn't have to listen to them. That'd have been terrible. I just kind of want to go over, and if you've got some time later on in the evening, by all means, just go over the plaques of all of our past inductees are over there if you didn't get over there already. It's really neat, like I said, what we've got going here in Sauk Center, and their pictures and their plaques are all over there, along with a couple of the trophies that we're able to dig out for some of the people that we're honoring tonight. I want to go through, as Bergie mentioned, 2011 was the first year that we had the Hall of Fame banquet. It was held in Girard's back then, which is now Elmer's. In 2011, our first class, we had 3 athletes that were inducted. One was Ed Flipson. The other 2 are both here tonight. And before I even announce them or the rest of our inductees from the past, it really is, I appreciate it, and I know the other people really appreciate it when you guys that are already in show up. It means a lot to those that are coming in, and I think just to the rest of the committee and everybody that's involved. So thanks for showing up, those of you that have been inducted in the past. But our other 2 athletes in that first class, if you're capable, if you guys would both stand, please. Izzy and Joe Schmeezy. That same first class of 2011, we had 2 coaches that were inducted, Mr. Phil Du Bois and Mr. Harry Hansen. And then we had a community member, our first community member that first year, who is also here. And if she would stand also, Dutch Wiener. Our second class, 2013, and that was the crew that I was not able to be there for. My wife and I were out of town. I don't remember what was going on even, but there were 3 athletes in the second class. None of them are here tonight, unfortunately, but Lauren Bestie, Dan Peterson, and Laura Blank Fuchs. So those 3 athletes were put in that year. Our one coach that was put in 2013, and he is here, is Ken Nelson. Ken, if you could stand, please. Did he stand? I couldn't tell if he was up or not. I could tell you were. And then in 2015, the coach that was inducted was Lou Barley. I'm sorry, that was the following year. Ken Nelson was 2013. Our community member in 2013 was Lorraine Peschel. And Lorraine's not here tonight either. Then in 2015, the coach that was put in was Lou Barley. We had 2 athletes that year. One of them is here. One that's not here is Tim Schmitz. He was put in 2015. And the athlete that was also put in that year, and she is here, is Ann Meyer-Feidel. Ann, if you could stand, please. And then we had one that went in as an athlete coach. I'm on the committee, and I'm not real sure why we titled it. I played basketball with him a few times. I can't call him an athlete, but Ken Vogt got put in that year. He claimed he was a wrestler, and that's why he didn't play basketball very well. I don't know. The coach I mentioned was Lou Barley, and then the community member that year, and he's also here, is Mark Knobloch. The last go-round, 2017, we had 4 athletes that were honored that night. The first one was not here, Jackie Bestie Alderman. And then the next 2 that were honored that night are here. One was Mark Mayer. Mark, if you could stand. Mark's way in the back there, waving. He showed up late, so he got a cheap seat back there. Also that year was Dean Kaufman. Dean is back there as well. And then the 4th athlete that year was wrestler Mike Fiddler, was with that group. And then the coach that was inducted that year, and I had the good fortune of putting him up in our house for a couple of days, and I'm glad he didn't come back this year, was Joe Shabluski, our old baseball coach. So that's the list of people, and like I said, their plaques are all over there. If you've got some time later on the night, go take a peek. They're obviously a very deserving bunch, as is the bunch that we're going to introduce tonight. It's just, again, it's really neat to see. You know, as a committee member, we're asked, exactly what is the criteria? How does this? There is no set criteria, honestly. We discuss, throw around. It's hard, if you gave somebody a batting title, it goes to the one that had the highest batting average. You give the scoring leader, it's the one that scored the most points. If you give it, some things are cut and dried in life. This is one of those that's not cut and dried, but I will assure you that everybody's in is very deserving, and those that are going in tonight are also very, very deserving. And those in the future that we put in, I'm sure that they will be very deserving in the sense that they've done some good things for us here at Sauk Center. Did it go dead? Now it's on again? Okay, I don't think you'll have trouble with me. I can step away from it, but some of the others later on might have a hard time with it, so... That's 35 years in the classroom. So. Okay, we're here tonight, as I mentioned, to honor those 7 individuals. And I'm going to start, and they're going to appear, by the way, in the same order that they're on your program. So those of you that are going to be up here speaking later on, you can kind of get prepared in that order. Our first inductee is not here, obviously. Like I said, I've been here 37 years, and not even Lauren would know. Lauren, you never met this guy either. And if you haven't, Lauren, I'm sure maybe nobody here has. Harry and Phil aren't here tonight, but I know they didn't meet the guy. But he is, actually, we came up with a category all its own as a committee to honor Jim Ersfeld. Dave Simpkins, who had the paper here in town, who is now gone, he did a ton of research, I know, on Mr. Ersfeld for us. I'm going to read through the things that we were able to collect, primarily the newspaper in town collected, and you'll see why we are honoring him here tonight as a Sauk Center Athletic at the Sauk Center Athletic Banquet. Jim Ersfeld was moved to Sauk Center in 1898. So like I said, we don't have anybody around that. By the way, the title that we came up with was not an athlete, not a community member, not a coach, but a distinguished alumnus. And then it's defined, and actually Mr. Bergman did some digging and found it for us, but it's a proud alumnus of the school who was an athlete or a coach, but is better known for significant contributions in other areas, is how it's defined. And that's how he's going in. And he's our first one, by the way, in this area. Jim Ersfeld moved to Sauk Center in 1898 from a farm near Barville. He taught English to Polish-speaking students over there in the Morrison County to earn enough money so that he could rent a room here in Sauk Center because he wanted to attend the Sauk Center High School. In Ersfeld's first few days at school, he thought it would be neat to organize the school's first football team. Obviously, that's why we're talking about him here tonight. On that first football team that he organized to put together in 1898, he was the quarterback, he was the captain, and he was also the coach. The September 22nd paper, the Herald paper here in Sauk Center, 1898, there was an edition that Mr. Simpkins was able to find, and it read this: "Citizens can watch the first game of football ever played in this city, as the new Sauk Center team will play the high school team from Alexandria on the home grounds, just south here in Sauk Center of the Great Northern Depot. Admission will be 15 cents. There was an estimated 500 people that watched that game against Alexandria. Alexandria, unfortunately, won 8-0. And it said in the article that there was only one player that was ejected for slugging that night. In 1901, which was Ersfeld's senior year in high school, the Herald reported a lively baseball game against Paynesville, where Sauk Center beat Paynesville 12-8. 1901. After the game was played, they decided to have a foot race, and they would have all the players race down 3rd Street here in Sauk Center. Jim Ersfeld was reported to be the winner, hands down. A week later, written in the Herald, Jim Ersfeld also participated in a track and field event sponsored by the High School Athletic Association at the head of Melrose Road. He won the 100-yard dash that day, the running broad jump, the hammer throw, the relay, the 220-yard race. Unfortunately, Ersfeld came in second in both the shot put and the half mile. He was a good friend of Sinclair Lewis's, which is another amazing thing when we start looking through it. Of course, everybody knows Sinclair Lewis. Somebody tell Kenny back there if he doesn't. He may not, I don't know. But Ersfeld was a good friend and a classmate of Sinclair Lewis. Sinclair Lewis wrote this about his friend Jim: "There were but few in Sauk Center High whom I knew better, and none who I admired more. We elected him president of our class, president of the Literature Society, president of the Athletics Association. Jim was one of the best singers, a fine debater, and by far the best actor in our senior class play. Jim played baseball, was captain of the football team, our football coach, played both offense and defense, and never got out of the game. In 1900, he and he alone caused Sauk Center to win the Park Region Athletic Association track meet, which was a competition between Sauk Center, Alexandria, and Fergus Falls. Jim was the best runner in all events, the best jumper, both high jump and broad jump, and next to the best shot putter and hammer thrower." Sinclair Lewis's comments on him. After he graduated here from Sauk Center in 1901, Jim Ersfeld attended the University of Minnesota. While at the University of Minnesota, he played 4 years of football for the Gophers. Jim was a halfback for the Gophers, and he was elected captain his senior year playing for the Gophers. In 1904, which was his senior year, the Gophers went 13-0. They outscored their opponents, listen carefully, 725-12 in their 13-0 season. Jim was a key player during the time that he played there. The Gophers at that time, from 1903 to 1905, actually had a 35-game winning streak. The Gophers were awarded the 1904 national title by one of the associations that named national champions back in those days. It said in one of the write-ups that Minnesota, Michigan, and Penn State were all awarded national titles by some math formulas and resource groups in history that used some method of declaring who the titles went to. So that was in 1904. He played his last collegiate game of football for the Gophers, and he had pneumonia. After playing the game, he got extremely sick to the point where the doctors told him he probably had to leave the climate here in Minnesota. So he literally left because of his health and moved to California. So he gets to California, and he decides, well, I think I'll attend Stanford. He gets to Stanford, and in 1909, he becomes a lawyer. He gets his first job as a lawyer in Hollywood. While in Hollywood, he was the attorney for a couple names that we all recognize. He was John Wayne's attorney and also Walt Disney's attorney. He, 1924, founded the Hollywood Athletic Club and the Lakeview Golf Club, where he had friends like Bob Hope and Bing Crosby that often played with him in the golf course. Jim Ersfeld's grandson, who we were hoping might make it here tonight, wasn't able to. I think he lived in Boston or something, and the family, when Berge had some connections with the family, it's not like they wanted to get somebody here, they really did, but they weren't able to get anybody here. But his grandson said this, quote, my grandfather, here's my cry part of it, because it does choke me up even this many years ago. My grandfather was always proud of his Sauk Center days. This is Ersfeld talking years later in California. The grandson talking about his grandfather. My grandfather had a picture of that 1898 team on his hallway in his house in California. Loves talking about life in Sauk Center and what it meant to him. So, sorry about that. So our first inductee, Jim Ersfeld. So, congratulations go out to that family. So that was pretty neat, and like I said, obviously after we received all that stuff, we thought that it would be pretty neat to get his name up there somewhere. Next, our first athlete of the night. First athlete of the night is Rob Miller. Unfortunately, Rob is not here tonight. He's out in Oregon. Rob is a 1983 graduate of Sauk Center. He was a three-sport athlete here in Sauk Center, where he ran cross-country in the fall, he wrestled in the winter, and he ran track in the spring. Rob's senior year, he was a 167-pound district wrestling champion. Very good wrestler. That's not why he's probably here, though, tonight, or honored here tonight. He was an outstanding cross-country runner as well as a trackster. His accomplishments in those two sports. While participating in cross-country here in Sauk Center, Rob was a 5-time letter winner. 5 years, he was named to the all-conference team. Rob competed in cross-country at the state level his sophomore, junior, and senior years. Twice, he received all-state honors. In the spring, he ran track. He was also a 5-year letter award winner in track. He set the school record here in Sauk Center in both the 1,600 meter and the 3,200 meter runs. In his junior year in track, Rob was conference, district, and region champ in both those events, the 1,600 and the 3,200 meter race. He placed second that year, his junior year, in state competition in the 1,600. His senior year here in high school in Sauk Center, 1982-83, Rob again was conference, district, and region champ in the same two events, the 1,600 and the 3,200 meter race. And his senior year, he was a state individual champ. At the state level, he won the 1,600 meter title and also the 3,200 meter title. Winning those two titles his senior year, Rob is known as our first Sauk Center athlete to win an individual state award. If you go to the school, look in the gymnasium, they've got a list of all of our state individual champions. His name will be the first one to appear on that list. He won those two titles as a state champion, 1,600 and 3,200 meter champion in the state of Minnesota. After Rob graduated from Sauk Center in 1983, He had received a scholarship to go to the University of Minnesota also. There, while at the University of Minnesota, he was a 4-year letter winner for the Gophers in both track and cross country. His senior year, Rob was named captain for the Gophers in both track and cross country, and he received all-conference recognition his senior year as an all-conference Big Ten runner. After graduating from college, Rob coached for a year at the University of Minnesota, where he had just competed. He then went on to De La Salle High School as a cross-country and track coach, and then from De La Salle, after being there a year, went to Edina and became a very, very successful coach there at Edina for 20 years, I believe, both as a cross-country and track coach. So, as I mentioned, Rob is not here, but Shelley is good enough to show up, his wife, and it is with great pleasure that I recognize Rob Miller with a plaque. And Shelley, if you would come up, please. He's our first athlete inductee into the Sauk Center Hall of Fame, Rob Miller. We offered Shelley to speak a little bit, but she's one of them that said she'd rather. The third one on the program, also going in as an athlete. Make sure I've got it right. James Jelke? Yeah, thanks. Jim was a Sauk Center grad here in 1968. He was an excellent athlete in all 3 sports that he played in. He played football in the fall. Jim played basketball in the winter, and then baseball in the spring. In the fall, for football, his senior year, Jim was voted the team captain. He was named the West Central All-Conference team, and he was named the team's most valuable player. He also made the All-Region team his senior year. In basketball, in the wintertime, Jim was named a tri-captain. He was named to the All-Conference team again for West Central Conference, and he was again named the MVP. Jim was also named the All-Area basketball team. In the spring of the year, Jim played baseball. He was one of the team's tri-captains. He was named to the West Central All-Conference team. And his senior year, he batted .511 for the Streeters. As you can tell, he was it wasn't just one sport, it wasn't two. He was just a great athlete in all 3 sports. After graduating here from Sauk Center in 1968, I gotta preface this a little bit before I go on. I became a neighbor of Jim and the family. And his brother John, and they're both just super good guys. Neither one of them would brag a bit about their accomplishments in high school nor in college. John, every once in a while, would tell me something about Jim, and Jim would every once in a while tell me something about John, but neither one of them would say anything about themselves. Just really neat guys. Their dad was Al, which was a longtime coach here also, and boy, he was a neat guy too. Those of you guys that had Al as a teacher, a science teacher, probably didn't think at times he was so neat. He was one of those guys, he'd backhand you if you had it coming. And you could back when Al was coaching. But that's kind of the way the boys were. Not that they backhanded you, but I mean, they were big, rough, rugged guys. So the reason I say that is I want to preface it that Jim was a good guy and a great friend, and as his brother John. And John, unfortunately, is not able to be here tonight, but a couple of his daughters came to be here for Uncle Jim. But Jim went off to college to play football. And when I asked John about it, John kind of smiled and said, well, you know, Jim. Meaning, he went to New Mexico, University of Mexico. And I think, Joe, I don't know, the word was that maybe you put in a good word for him out there. I don't know. Yes? And Jim went out to the University of New Mexico to play football. And he certainly could play football. That was probably, I don't know, what I heard, that was probably the best sport of the 3, even though he was great in all 3. Went out to New Mexico. Things were going great. He was going to be a football player at the University of New Mexico, and he was a good one. Well, Jim, kind of like a few of us, that freshman year, found out that college was great, and the only bad thing about it was he had to go to class once in a while. Jim really didn't want to, he didn't care to go to class anymore than he had to. So New Mexico wasn't a fit. So Brother John told me this. He says, people don't know this, but from New Mexico, he went up to North Dakota State, played for the Bison. I'd never heard that. They said he could have played for the Bison. I talked to Jamie, his wife, and she said, I didn't know he played over there for the Bison. Again, Jim wasn't one of those guys to say much about that. Well, he went to play for the Bison. They had the same restrictions up there. You had to go to class once in a while. Not that Jim was a dumb guy by any means. I mean, he became an educator. He just, for a couple of years, he didn't want to go to school too bad. He decided, because now Brother John graduated, he's going to join Brother John out in Valley City, North Dakota. And that's where he found his niche, settled down enough where he went to classes. He did outstanding and, did great. And John says, golly, he was a good student. He just didn't like to go to class. But he had a great career at Valley City. While playing at Valley City, he was named All-Conference. He played defensive end out there for them. In 1972, he was the team captain, and he was also their defensive most valuable player. Had an outstanding career at Valley City and loved it out there. After he graduated from Valley City, he went on into education. As I mentioned, he got his degree, became a teacher and a coach. While teaching, that's where he met his wife, Jamie. Spent some time in North Dakota, Minnesota, and as time went on, he eventually decided that he wanted to be back home, I think. Wanted to be back in Sauk Center. And he came back and he went to work for the home school. Those of us who have been around know what we mean by the home school, the Eagles Healing Nest now. But he worked out there for the rest of his career while his wife taught at the high school here in Sauk Center. And he was just a great, great person and a well-deserving athlete here in Sauk Center. He passed away in 2018, which is just a little over a year and a half ago now, and unfortunately isn't able to be here. So his sons, I think both, Greg and Justin, if you guys come up and accept for Jim Jelke.
Well, if you want to stand next to somebody that's not as well dressed, Brian, you can come up here, but I'm a little more handsome than you, so you'll still lose there. But I didn't, like most kids, they probably don't get a chance to see their parents play sports or know them as an athlete. And like Brian said, Dad didn't talk about himself a lot, so the stories I heard were probably from hunting trips with John and Gary, and they talk about Valley City or high school or different things, but he wasn't one of those guys that was his whole life. I mean, high school wasn't the greatest time of his life, so it wasn't something he sat and talked about. I think he did it, and he did it well, and did it with passion, and gave it his all and moved on from it. And I think that's one thing I learned from my dad is just, if you're going to do something, do it well and move on. Give it your all, and I think he was happy with his career in high school. He would have got a kick out of this tonight, and he would have thanked his dad and for being there and instilling sports on him. Thanked his brother and the committee for nominating him, and friends and teammates. And I don't know all of you. You guys probably have better stories and better memories than I do with the sports aspect of it. But thank you to everybody.
Well, I got some cleanup to do from Coach Olson. A couple mistakes in there, but okay. So I'm Greg. I'm the oldest son. Anyway, like my brother said, I'm sure my dad would want to thank a bunch of people. I wrote a bunch of names down here. Again, though, my family, we want to thank the committee and everybody that put together tonight. Also, congratulations to all the other inductees. My grandpa, like my brother said, he would want to thank him. My Uncle John, Gary Graham, is who my brother was talking about. They all grew up together and played out at Valley City together. So I'm going to go back to, I'm not going to talk long, but my dad was really young for his class. He'd gone out to, my grandma graduated from Hollywood High School, actually, and she talked my grandpa into moving out there for a year. and I think Jim Ersfeld was their landlord or something. I don't know. But so they went out there, and my dad went to kindergarten out there. And you could start at 4 years old back then, and so he came back, went to Sauk. He went into first grade, so he was a year younger already. But anyway, so my point is, before his sophomore year of high school, I was talking to Rick Meyer earlier, and one story I remember is my dad really wanted to start on the football team his sophomore year, and so he begged my grandpa to let him go get a job on Rick Meyer's dad's farm, and he baled hay for 25 cents an hour, and he just wanted to get strong for football, and then he ended up starting that year. So, which meant his senior year of football, he was only 16 years old for most of the season. His birthday was in November, and he told me a couple times he wondered how good he might have been if he would have had that extra year, but I think it worked out okay for him. But anyway, then other people that I just remember him talking about. I talked to PJ Plitnick tonight. His brother Dreamer and my dad were good friends. Rick Wiener's here tonight. Kenny Vogt, Phil Du Bois was a good friend with my grandfather, and I got to spend Justin and I both got to spend a lot of time around Phil growing up. Lauren Bestie too. My dad used to talk about what a good athlete Lauren Bestie was too. I'm sure I'm forgetting some people, so I apologize. Also, sorry, I got another list here. Guys that I remember him talking about playing with: Bob Kane, Daryl Boddicker, Jim Corton, Daryl Ricci, Dean Meyer, and then I had the privilege of meeting Joe and Izzy Schmeezing tonight. And like Coach said, my dad kind of followed Joe down to New Mexico. It was New Mexico State, not University of New Mexico. Okay. But anyway, and he looked up to those guys when I know he talked about those 1961 and 63 basketball teams. He looked up to those guys growing up. So yeah, he went out to New Mexico at 17, and one story that he had from out there that I always thought was neat was you couldn't play varsity sports as a freshman back then, and so he started on the freshman team down there, and they were playing University of Texas El Paso, and he picked up a fumble and ran it in for a touchdown at that Sun Bowl Stadium in El Paso, which I used to see that place on TV and thought it was cool that Dad scored a touchdown there. But yeah, Dad loved to compete, which my mom found out at Valley City. So they actually met at Valley City, and they weren't dating yet, but my dad broke my mom's collarbone. Mom, is that right? Huh? Broke her arm. They were playing floor hockey or something, and broom ball, and he ran her over and broke her arm. It's a true story. And my mom used to say that he didn't even say sorry. And I asked him one time if he ever said sorry, and he said no. And I said, why not? And he said, well, she should have gotten out of my way. So, but anyway, he was really competitive, and I remember he used to tell me too that he would get so nervous the night in high school, like before games, that he couldn't sleep. And I don't think it was nervous that he wasn't going to play well. It was just more nervous. He just wanted to win so bad. And my grandma one time told me a story that I think kind of sums up my dad pretty well. It was high school. I think it was after a basketball game. They had lost the game, and he came home and he was in tears. And my grandma was saying, she didn't understand it because he'd played such a good game. And she said, Jamie, why are you crying? You played such a good game. And he looked at her and he said, Mom, we lost. And she said, well, you can't win them all. And my dad very seriously looked at her and he said, why not? And that was kind of his mindset and his mentality. And a lot of the things he learned from sports, I think he carried with him the rest of his life. And as a coach, a teacher, a principal, a father, there wasn't never any excuse for not giving your best effort. Team always came first. Success was a result of hard work, and so those are things I remember about him. So, again, to the committee, thank you for recognizing him with the award, with this award, and carrying on his memory. Thank you.
I apologize for the mic here too, and if you're up here and if it's acting up, sorry, we'll just do the best we can to try to keep it moving along. By the way, if you do need to get up and get a beverage or go to the restroom or something, I really do appreciate if you don't do it while the inductees. You could do. I don't care if you get up and run around when I'm up here, but when they're up here, just make sure you give them your attention. Our next inductee, and again, Lauren, is that right? Lauren Tank. Lauren is going in as a community member. He was a 1957 grad here in Sauk Center, and when I got the word, and I've known Lauren since I came to town here too, but when I got the word that Lauren was going in as a community member, I said, boy, that's neat. And I dug up some old yearbooks, and wow, I got some good laughs. Not because of Lauren, but because of all the other names that I saw there during that area. Bitz, you're one of them. It was pretty neat to see that a bunch of names and faces that I kind of recognized the faces, but knew the names from a long time ago. Even though he's going in as a community member, as I went through those yearbooks, it was obvious that he was also an excellent athlete while here in Sauk Center. I did some digging up on Lauren, and he played 4 sports. He played football in the fall. He played basketball in the winter. And by the way, when I found that football picture, and Lauren even commented when I told him I found his picture in the yearbook, it was comical because in 57 they had like these face masks that all they covered was your nose and your teeth. And so you couldn't even tell it was Lauren. It was just this hard piece of plastic wrapped around his face like this. So I guess it was a step up from the leather helmets they wore just a few years before that, though, right, Lauren? So anyway, so he played football in the fall, basketball in the winter, and then in the spring he played both baseball and ran some track during his high school career. And then when he was done there with high school, and I'd heard from several others too that he was an outstanding fast-pitch softball player, which was very, very popular back in those days as well in the area. After graduating from high school, Lawrence stayed very connected with our local high school sports. He refereed a lot of local stuff, both in basketball and in football. He said probably around 20 years he did some refereeing. Lauren was always willing here in Sauk Center, and this is what I remember as a coach in the school. He was always willing to help out the local high school athletes any way possible. He all volunteered to come and watch them or spend some time on the practice field. I know a lot of the athletes he'd take out hunting and fishing, and anybody that knows Lauren, that's his passion. He loved to take hunting and fishing and young kids to have a good time and do that. He also, I know, had some tickets for the Gophers and took kids once in a while down to see the Golden Gophers play sports down there as well. What he's probably most known for, and probably the biggest thing as far as the athletic program is concerned, is and why he's inducted here tonight as a community member, was for 50 years, 50 plus years, or around that amount of time, he charted and did things for the coaches as a statistician. He charted plays and he ran the camera in the fall for the Streeter football programs. In the spring, he would keep book for the softball teams. And in the winter, and this is where the 50-year part comes in, he would keep the stats or the scorebook for the basketball teams. He started, and the way I understood it, he started in 1961 keeping the scorebook, and the main reason he did is because he had a brother that was playing then. I think his brother's sitting next to him now. His brother, Jerry, was on the 61 basketball team that went to state, and I think they took third in the state that year, and Lauren was there to keep the stats, keep the book for that state team. That was the first state basketball team, by the way. That was the first Sauk Center team in basketball to go to state, and that was in 1961. Lauren was proud to say, and he should be proud to say this, and I heard it said the other night at the basketball game when they honored these guys and gals at halftime. The Sauk Center basketball teams, boys and girls combined, have been down at the state tournament 11 times. And of those 11 times, Lorne was the scorekeeper 10 of the 11 trips to the state tournament, which is quite an accomplishment. The one year, one comment about that, one year that Lorne didn't, he was at the game, but that's the year, those of you that remember, Sauk ended up playing Long Prairie. The state of Minnesota had some goofy setup, and rather than going to the cities and play down there for the state tournament, what they did is they sent Sauk and Long Prairie, first round of the state tournament, up to Moorhead, Minnesota, to play the first round of the game. It was kind of a flop, and they ended up getting rid of it. The state did, but Lorne was there watching, I think, with Brother Jerry, if I remember right. Watched the Sauk Center game, but he didn't keep so that's the one year he didn't keep the book for the Streeters at the state tournament. The other note I made about that accomplishment of being there 10 of the 11 years is I just thought it might be wise to tell Bergie, make sure you don't let him go, Bergie, as a statistician, because he got a better chance of getting there again probably if he's doing it. He is appreciated, like I said, by so many athletes in this community, and coaches as well, and fans. So it's with great honor, I congratulate and invite our next inductee into the class of 2019 Sauk Center Hall of Fame, Lorne Tank. Lorne, come on.
Hello? Yeah. Good evening. I just wondered if the reason Ole had to find a belt, he didn't have one big enough at home. Brian covered a lot of things that I had written down here, so I'll still go over them now. This is some of the things I was involved in over the years. Scott had just taken the girls' coaching job. I knew that I was going to retire April 1st. I asked if I'd be a scorekeeper, and it was something that I had done before. As I said, I was 61, 2, and 3, and then all the basketball 11 times for the scorekeeper. When Charlie Warren took over football, he asked me to chart plays. After a few years, the person doing the filming stepped down. I asked if I could film. It's much nicer up in the press box. Charlie stepped down and Brian Riley took over, and I've been filming for him ever since. In softball, the same thing happened. Mike Allens took over and asked me to keep score for him. I did until he stepped down. Then TJ took over and I kicked score for him, and I'm looking forward to the spring. Something I always liked to do was hunt and fish over the years. I've taken many kids hunting and fishing, friends' kids and their grandkids. And while working in school, I met many, many kids that could take hunting and fishing. I hope they enjoyed it as much as I did. I'd like Gopher football. And when Lou Holtz came to Minnesota, I bought 2 season tickets. One to take a kid fishing, take a kid to the games. I had him for 10 years. When school was short of track coaches, they asked me to help out. I helped out for 5 years. It was fun to help out the program. Just after Scott took over the girls program, I asked Scott if I could send some girls to summer camps. The next 4 years, I helped 4 girls go to camp. 3 went to basketball camp, and 1 went to a swimming camp. Shannon was the first one that went. I'd like to thank the parents who let me take their kids hunting and fishing. It has been great fun being with the 3 sports program. I am waiting for the game now, as I always have, if not more. In closing, I would like to thank the committee for this great honor. It has been great fun. Thank you.
Okay, so we've gotten through 4. We've got 3 to go, just in case there's any of you got to get home to bed here soon. And hopefully, again, it's great to be able to recognize these 4 that we have already, and certainly the 3 that are yet to come. Our 5th inductee tonight is also being inducted as an athlete, Gary Peters. Gary was a 1989 grad here from Sauk Center. Gary was also a 3-sport athlete. In the fall, I had the good fortune of being his football coach. He was a quarterback for me. He was a 2-year starter at quarterback, 2-year letter winner. honorable mention all conference his senior year. The thing I would say, the biggest thing about Gary was he just had such a relaxed, poised way about him. And somebody asked, one of the writers for a paper or something asked about Gary and about his qualities, and the comment I made was, I think, nowadays you hear about so many kids that just play one sport. I think the fact that he competed in 3 sports, which most of our athletes that are recognized here do, I think competing in 3 sports just did something for him that way. He had a confidence about himself as a quarterback. He also competed in basketball in the winter, and then, of course, as a golfer in the spring. He held, in football, Gary as a quarterback, he held a school record for career passing yards that held up about 20 years here before it was beaten. He had a great receiver in Chris Essler. I was going to say Derek. Chris Essler, who was an outstanding receiver, but Gary really, he threw the ball extremely well for us during the time he played. In the winter, Gary was a basketball player. He played guard for the basketball team, 2-year starter there as well, 2-year letter winner, and was also named to honorable mention all-conference team as a point guard. Probably the biggest reason, though, that Gary's getting inducted, I mean, he was a very good football and a very good basketball player, but golf was his sport, above and beyond the other sports that he competed in. After I got to know the family, I knew the other 3 boys, not as well as Gary, and I was always impressed at how all of them were good athletes. They grew up on the golf course, and especially I was impressed with knowing their dad, how Herbie, as little athletic abilities you had, Herbie, how your kids could be so athletic. It must have been you, Alice, because Herbie was. Gary was in golf. He was a 5-year letter winner in golf. 5 years. 4-time he was a West Central All-Conference golfer. He was a state individual qualifier in golf 4 times. Went to state as an individual 4 times. His first year down at the state tournament, he ended up 18th in the state. Second time he went down there, he ended up 13th in the state. Third time he went down there, got a little better. He was 10th in the state. And then the last time he went as a senior, he got runner-up. He was runner-up state champ that year, his senior year. So 4 times competing as an individual. He also, of course, golfed on the team here in Sauk Center. He was the team's MVP his junior and senior years. And as a team member, besides competing as an individual, as a team member in 85, he golfed on the team, and they were state runner-ups. And then in 86, 87, and 88, his sophomore, junior, and senior year, those golf teams went to state and won the state all 3 years. And Gary was obviously a big cog in that team. We went to the trophy case today, Mr. Bergman and myself, and those 3 state championship teams are in the trophy case, and I only grabbed one of them. And I have to be honest, which one of the boys is it? Which one is it, Greg? Greg, I grabbed the one that you weren't in. It was Brian, yeah. I grabbed the one that neither of you were in. And I know you guys were in a couple of them, but you weren't in this one. That was one reason I didn't want you guys to get the big head. And then the other reason, to be honest, is both Dean and Mark are in that picture, and they gave me some of their pizza last night after the game. So. But anyway, Gary was down there as a team player, as a team member 4 years, as well as going as an individual. He also represented the Streeter golf team in 1989, playing the All-American tournament down in Phoenix, Arizona. After he graduated in 89 here from Sauk Center, Gary went on to college and played for the Huskies down at St. Cloud State. He graduated with honors down there at St. Cloud and had a business finance major. He then went on to work for Wells Fargo. Unfortunately, Gary passed away in the fall of 2011. He has survived, and they are here tonight, his wife, Debbie, and the 3 children, Ashley, Nick, and Jacob. And then, of course, Grandpa and Grandma Herb and Alice are here as well. And two of the brothers came. John was not able to get here, but Greg and Brian are both here. So it's with honor. I congratulate our inductee, Gary Peters, into the 2019 Sauk Center Athletic Hall of Fame. His brother, Greg, will accept for him.
Thanks, Ollie. It's actually great to be here tonight, see so many familiar faces and friends, and thumbs up back there. Before I start, I want to throw out a couple shout-outs. I know there's been a couple thank yous already, but first, I know Gary would be very honored to be part of this inductee class. I mean, you've heard about him, you've read the program, you can see it's a very impressive group, so I want to say congratulations to all the inductees tonight. And then second, again, they were recognized a little bit early, but I want to thank everybody that put together this event. You can see it's a great event, and a lot of people here, so thank you for anybody that had a helping hand in putting this event together. Now, while I feel privileged to be here tonight to accept this honor, and actually, before I get to that, I missed a paragraph here. First, I get the privilege of accepting this honor on behalf of my brother Gary and on behalf of his wife Deb and their kids Ashley, Nick, and Jacob. So where I was at was, while I feel privileged to be here tonight, I'm not so sure how Gary would feel about that, having one of his older brothers up here representing him. As you can imagine, as the youngest of four very competitive brothers, we didn't treat him very well. There was frequent beatdowns, and there was we didn't play fair. If we were playing football, we got to play quarterback, running back, and wide receiver, and Gary got to snap the ball and block for us. And if we were playing baseball, we got to pitch, hit, and catch, and Gary got to chase the foul balls. And definitely in golf, if we were on the practice range, we'd be on one end of the practice range and hitting golf balls, and Gary would be on the other end of the practice range with the shag bag picking up those golf balls. And we frequently used him for target practice. So I suspect Gary would love for his three older brothers to be lined up right here tonight, where he could, take a few shots at us and give us a little payback. In situations like this, you oftentimes hear that the youngest of the siblings is the best athlete, and that was definitely the case in our family. I mean, Gary had really good hand-eye coordination, and he, he had very good athletic ability, and he had the confidence to go with it. And so, it didn't take him very long, and he was bypassing us in all the activities we were playing, and frequently beating us at those activities, and that made Gary very happy. And he let us know that it made him very happy in his squeaky voice. They called him Squeaky. But I'll say personally, for me, the thing that led to much of Gary's success was not his hand-eye coordination or his athletic ability, but Gary was not afraid to fail. He was not afraid to fail. When he did, and he had some epic failures, he would just laugh and joke and move on. And I remember one time he came home from a golf tournament, and he announced that he'd shot a double frosty. Now, for you non-golfers out there, a double frosty is an 88 because it resembles two Frosty and the Snowman, two Frosty Snowman. And it's a score nobody ever wants to shoot. None of the golfers want to shoot because it's not a good score. But he came home and announced, that he had shot a double frosty, and of course his sympathetic brothers were like, "Wow, Gary, how can a golfer of your caliber possibly shoot an 88?" And he paused, and he looked at us, and he said, "Well, I made a 10-footer to avoid an 89 on the last hole." So that was Gary. He was constantly joking, and he didn't take himself too seriously. And when he failed, he moved on. And the next day he would typically shoot a great round or have a great game. And so that was him. I think he learned at a very early age that stuff that many of us don't learn until later on, which is only through your failures and learning from those failures do you achieve greater heights, and that was definitely the case for Gary. Now, I know Gary also knew that his success was not his alone. He had a lot of help, and it was a group effort. So I know he'd want to thank a lot of people. And he would start with his teammates. Gary had great teammates. Teammates like Troy Gerber, Chris Essler, Dean Kaufman, Mark Mayer, P.J. Plitnick, Paul Octor, Dave Heinen, and many more. Those teammates, competed with him, challenged him, made him a better player, but most importantly, they became best friends. And Gary knew that was the most important part of playing sports, was those relationships that are forged on and off the field of play that oftentimes last a lifetime, and that was definitely the case with Gary. Gary would also want to thank his coaches. He had great coaches. Harry Hansen, coach like Harry Hansen. Harry Hansen gave Gary his very first golf lesson. Phil Du Bois, Brian Olson, Ken Nelson, and many more. Many of those coaches are already in the Hall of Fame here. But those coaches obviously rounded out Gary's fundamentals and made him a better player, but they put him in a position to succeed. And I want to give one example of that, and it relates to Coach Nelson, who I see right over there. And I can relate to this because Coach Nelson was my coach as well, and my brother Brian, who's here, is his coach as well. Before a big tournament, like a conference championship or a state championship, we would typically go to a tournament site, the day or two before. And so Coach Nelson would bring us to the tournament or to the practice round, and he'd play with us. And so we would all tee off on the first hole, and we'd be walking up the fairway, and Coach Nelson would be taking notes. And we'd hit our second shot, and Coach Nelson would be taking notes. We'd get up by the green. Coach Nelson would be taking notes. And he would do this for all 18 holes. And then the day of the tournament, he would present us with a packet of information. And on that packet was a diagram of each of the 18 holes. And on each of the holes, he had his notes. And he would give us notes like yardages from certain landmarks to the green that would help us with club selection. It would tell us if there was danger on the left side of the hole or danger on the right side of the hole. He would tell us to tee off either on the right side of the hole or the left side of the hole to avoid that danger. He would tell us if the green on that hole was faster or slower than normal. Heck, he even told us where the nearest bathroom was, which a lot of times was very important, especially for Gary. But it's that type of it was that type of preparation that Gary's coaches did on his behalf that helped him succeed. I mean, the day of the tournament, Gary knew he had a 2 to 3 stroke lead on the competition just because of the preparation that Coach Nelson had done on his behalf. So thank you, Coach Nelson, and thank you all of Gary's coaches who helped put him in a position to succeed. Now, I know Gary would also thank his family. I'm pretty sure he wouldn't thank his brothers, but if he did, it would be a different type of thank you, if you know what I mean. But I know he would thank our parents, Herb and Alice, who are here tonight. Mom and Dad took Gary to countless baseball fields, football fields, basketball gyms, golf courses, swimming pools, tennis courts, bowling alleys. I mean, you name it. And so, Gary was able to develop his skills across a lot of different sports. And so, and then when he got to be playing the sports, Mom and Dad never missed a game. I mean, they were at every one. And so Gary knew that he had their unconditional love and support. No matter whether he was shooting a double frosty or if he was having the game of his life. So thank you, Mom and Dad. Sorry. And I know Gary would think, I know Gary would thank his wife, Deb, and he would thank his kids for giving him the opportunity to share a little bit of what he learned on the athletic fields in Sauk Center by coaching their activities. Basketball, t-ball, hockey, etc. I know Gary loved coaching you guys. And if it's one thing I can say with certainty in this world, is that Gary would trade all of his success that he had in high school and this award tonight to be able to coach you guys one more day. Sorry, I knew that would be tough. Sorry. All right, and then last but not least, Gary would thank the community of Sauk Center. Sauk Center was a great place to grow up for Gary and to play sports. He could play in a lot of different sports and pursue whatever he wanted to do. And he didn't have to worry. He didn't have to focus on one sport like many kids do today, and he didn't have to worry about being cut. So it was a great community to grow up in. And when he was playing the team sports, he always knew the community had his back. So I know he was always proud to wear the maroon and white colors, and he was always proud to be called a Main Streeter. So once again, on behalf of Gary, I don't know why I'm so emotional here, sorry guys, but once again, on behalf of Gary, I want to thank all of you in this room and many people who are not in this room that played a part in Gary's success, whether it was in a big way or a small way. I know he's looking down tonight, and I think he's sticking it to me here with all this emotion. That's what I think is happening, but I know he's extremely thankful, and he's extremely proud to accept this honor. So, thank you.
Good job. I know that's not easy. Just a couple of comments. I got a list of stuff that I write down, and some I get from the paper, and some I get from here and there, and I don't always have it right. So, Greg Jelke, if I screwed up, I didn't intend to. No, I know you didn't. I know your mom would have intended to give me a hard time if she'd had the mic. And I can't help, Greg, when you're sitting here talking, honestly, I can't help. I'm thankful Coach Chabluski's not here, because he would have sighed when you started talking all that golf stuff. It's really is. The oldest Peters, he's the only one that played a spring sport. The other kids, they just golfed in the spring. John was the baseball player. Our sixth induction goes to another athlete, Mark Schwegman. Mark was a 1985 Sauk Center grad. Mark was his fourth sport athlete. In the spring, he played both baseball and track. In track, he actually threw the discus and the shot put. In his senior year, he was all conference in track and placed third in district in throwing the shot. He was just a big, strong kid that could. I don't think he worked a whole lot at it, but went out for track and could do some amazing things just because of pure strength. In the winter, Mark was an excellent basketball player. He was a 2-year starter on the varsity team. His senior year, he was all conference and named the team MVP. In the fall, this is one of those athletes that I know I can say this, the biggest reason he's here tonight is because of the fall sport. He was a football player, and he was one of the best we've had here at Sauk Center since I've been here, if not the best. I came in the fall of '83, which I mentioned. That was his junior year. I got to coach the offensive line. Gary Graham was the head coach. And after that year, I stayed on here and I coached 3 years as an assistant and then 22 as a head coach. And I can honestly say in that 25-year span, there was no defensive line here in Sauk Center that was any better than that defensive line that year. And he's one of the reasons. The other two weren't bad either. Brian Fredericks, who's our chief of police now in town, and I got to put a plug for him because he, never know. And then the animal of the three who didn't, if you saw the three of them stand together, and unfortunately the third one is not with us today, but Brian and Mark were specimen of men, even at age 18. And the third one, the nose guard, was probably as tough as those two big dudes, Eric Bieland. He was just an outstanding nose guard as well. So those three guys, really, as far as an entire defensive line, that was as good a bunch as we've had since I've been here. So in the fall, anyway, he was just an outstanding football player. Sophomore year, before I got here, he was a two-way starter, both at offensive tackle and at defensive tackle. Junior year, a two-way starter as well. He actually even did a little kicking, I remember. I don't know what got into Coach Graham's head, but he said, let's see if he can kick. And he did. Not bad at all. Not as good as you, Dino, but he was a good kicker. And in his senior year, he was known as one of the best football players in the state of Minnesota, honestly, at that time. His senior year was named the most valuable player of our conference, which is an awfully good conference, of course, the West Central Conference. He played in the All-State game. And I remember going on watching him in the All-State game, and I remember Coach Mader from Albany coached that week of the All-Stars get-together. And they get together and they practice for a week together. And I ran into Mader a couple weeks after the event at a golf tournament, golf just get-together. I probably shot worse than that double thing, whatever you were talking about. But I remember sitting down with Mader, and he was coaching in that All-Star game, and he says, Coach Olson, he said, I got to tell you something about that Schwegman kid. He said, we're practicing during the week, and we got this kid on the team. He's out here in the sticks, he was a cake eater. He was a city boy. John Melander, I believe, was his name. John Melander, I think he played at De La Salle or some big school in the city. He was like 6'7", and he was 280, and he was going to the university. And after he got done at the university, by the way, at the Gophers, he had an outstanding career with the Denver Broncos. He was just outstanding. I mean, he was a kid that, you looked at him, you could see, oh, boy, this guy's good. Well, Mader said, Coach Olson, I got to tell you something about that Melander. He was good, but he wouldn't line up against Schwegman in practice because Schwegman would kick his butt in practice. I guess Mark evidently put his helmet into his chin and busted his chin wide open on Wednesday's practice or something. And Melander didn't want to line up against him anymore. So Mark was just that kind of a football player. He had that get up that most kids don't. After graduation here from Sauk Center, he had an outstanding career, obviously, here in Sauk Center. He was a good rebounder, too, what I remember. You're nodding, but I remember the reason is you missed a lot of shots, and you'd have to get your own rebound to put them back up again. Last night I ran into Mark, and I love him to death, and his comment, Coach, he says, it's going to be good. It's all good, right? I said, yeah, it'll be all good. And then I warned him. I said, remember, Mark, when you're done, I get the mic back again one more time. He said, be nice both ways. So anyway, while he was having this great high school career, there was colleges all over that were obviously trying to get a hold of him, both Division II and Division I. Mark decided to go nearby to St. Cloud State to play for the Huskies. He had a great college career. He was a 4-year starter down there. They decided to move him from offensive guard or defensive tackle, from tackle to offensive guard. He made the move without asking many questions, as far as I know. Played offensive guard for them. He started 4 years for the Huskies. His junior and senior year, he was named the Huskies' outstanding offensive lineman. His senior year, he was recognized as an All-American football player there at St. Cloud State. He then had a short stint with the Seattle Seahawks as an offensive lineman. After things didn't work out so well with the Seahawks, Mark came back to Minnesota. He did some work as a prison guard, both down at St. Cloud and then also Moose Lake, Willow River. He now owns his own business in Malacca. I got to know his dad, Don. I'm sure he wishes he was here tonight. Mom Tootie was here. Very proud of him as well. Brother Joe, his wife Lori, and son Nicholas are here tonight. And I want to congratulate and honor our next inductee in 2019 Hall of Fame here in Sauk Center, Mark Schwegman.
Hello, everybody. So I was telling some of the guys at the game last night I wasn't going to write nothing down, but I knew I'd forget something. So, and thanks, Oli, for one shot. Wasn't too bad. I want to congratulate all the people that got inducted this year, and your condolences to the ones that aren't here. I want to introduce my family. Tootie, Marilyn Schwegman, my wife Lori, my son Nick. You introduced Joe as my brother. Joe grew up on our farm, so as Joe Kane, he's like a little brother to me. My niece Hannah, and then Pat Borgman would be like a second mother to us all along. So Pat and Paul Borgman, everybody knew him. On the farm, if you guys remember the blizzards in the 70s, we had I think it was a WD Alice with a scoop loader on it. We had those bad blizzards and you couldn't move. Paul Borgman showed up and had a big John Deere with a blower and got us out. So that's kind of that deal there. I want to thank the committee, the Hall of Fame committee. This is my first time tonight I got to see who was in there. Thanks for your vote, and I appreciate it. I also want to thank Sauk Center Schools for setting this up. This is quite an honor. I think this is even bigger than St. Cloud's, personally to me, because this is where it started. Then I want to thank some coaches, like Kevin Schumacher, I love you. No, really, Kevin and me when we played basketball, it was basketball. And that's the way it was. But all the coaches that were hired, I don't know who hired these coaches here in Sauk Center, but they're in the 80s. It's unbelievable, the talent and the coaching. And how they're so committed to the kids. Kevin Shuey, I call him Shuey, Kevin Schumacher, picks me up and we go hunting, I mean, who does that? Really, when you think about it, as a teacher. Hey, Schwaggy, I'm coming, we're going to go get some birds. So he brings his dog, and off we go. And then you have Shabluski out there a few times, too. You picture that, right? And Obie, and we're hunting pheasants on the weekends. And then when we're harvesting corn and plowing, well, I'm busy working, and hey, Schwaggy, can we come out and go hunting? Yeah, sure. So they came out. And I remember one year, Gary Graham and, Eric Bjallin and me, we're good friends, so I kept telling Eric about all these mallards that come in on our land, and Gary Graham overheard us in practice, and he goes, can I come out there and hunt with you? I said, yeah, sure, well, after Saturday morning after the game, we'll go. I said, there's not a lot of them, but... So we get out there at dark, and you sit about 3 rows in the cornfields, and it starts to get light, and you hear like a gravity box coming down the road. Thousands of them, I mean, they're just flying right above your head, and they land where we chopped the corn right in front of us. I remember Gary looked at me, his mouth dropped, and there was about 1,000, 2,000 birds sitting right there. He couldn't believe it. And you start shooting. Well, we missed most of them. You're just flock shooting. There's so many of them, you can't really aim at anything. But those are the times that I really remember is great coaches. And the administrative staff back then you should be proud of what you've done for coaching, hiring the right people. I also want to say Mr. Bergner for recognizing talent, I guess. In 9th grade, he was our gymnasium coach, and Schwegman we were playing badminton, Mr. Schreiber. He cut in on the gal I was playing against, first of all. I was like, okay, Mr. Berger, you want to play badminton? Let's play badminton. He says, you move pretty well for a big fella. You ever thought about playing O-line and D-line? I said, sure. Well, I think I probably could maybe be starting next year if you did that. You okay with that? Well, Mr. Bergner, if you remember him, a lot of you don't know him, but I had a lot of respect for the man and I ended up starting. I remember I started right tackle, and I think it was Bjork was that guard next to me. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have known where the hell to go because the plays. And it wasn't that I didn't understand it, but when you're a sophomore, you come out of ninth grade, the playbook is 10 times as big, so he's always whispering me what to do, which helps. So thank you, Mr. Ward. You got that guy right there. Okay? So, and then I want to thank Mr. Trutna, basketball coach, for putting up with me all the years. You go from football, and a lot of you don't understand, I was intense as hell when I played football. So you go from football to the basketball court, so you had to rein it in. It's not easy to do. You know what I mean? I mean, on football, you just, like Brian Fredericks, he said in the paper that the level that I like to be at is, it was very high in football. But I kept it in control. I didn't give too many 15-yard flags because I got more in college. The referee was Leeser. Then you go into basketball, but I'm actually friends with him now, and I'm friends with him on Facebook, which is kind of funny. And then he was a referee at St. Cloud State. He was the umpire, so he's watching us O-line, Anyways, I remember at St. Cloud State one time we were playing, and I was just cranked up. Somebody did something, and us O-line, we stick together as a brotherhood. And Troy's looking at me, number 72, we're going to get him, and something. And I started talking some trash to him, and Leeser, Schweiman, shut up, goddammit. I said, Leeser, what the hell? You keep it quiet, you're going to be out of the game. But if anybody knows my mom, Tootie, the laugh she has or the scream she has. I remember we played Duluth. We had this big tackle. I'm not kidding. He was 6'8", 6'9". His hands were the size of saucers. This guy's pipes were huge. And I had to play him all game. And Harry Jackson was the running back. We still got NCAA records for scoring, rushing yards in a season, and rushing yards in games in NCAA Division II. Well, he got upset. He was on defense, and we were pounding the ball down his throat. Well, he ripped Harry's helmet off and threw it down the field. True story. I flew up to this guy, and Troy Krause was next to me. We grabbed by the helmet. We started swinging. Flags were flying 15 yards, and it just got real quiet. And then you heard Tootie, whoo! Well, of course, you could hear him. I could hear him on the field. Sure as hell, that's Tootie. Concerned I was in a fight at, Nobody got kicked out, but it was some good times. Our coaches, like coaches in college, Shuey, you were intense. And there's nothing wrong with that because sometimes when you screw up, you just need it. And that was a lot like my dad, Don. If I did something wrong, I heard about it, It's just the way you were raised. And get through some more of the coaches. Mr. Boardman, 8th grade basketball. Mr. Miller, I don't know if he just lives right up the road here. That'd be 4th through 6th grade basketball. That's kind of where it really started for me, is the basketball at Holy Family School. It was a lot of fun. Sister Suzanne was the principal. I love her dearly. Sister Janine was my homeroom teacher, and I love her dearly. Holy Family School, if your kids don't go there, get them there, because they help you. I'm telling you, they help you out. It wasn't that I could take a test and not do well. I could read it, but I couldn't comprehend it at first. but they helped me, and I went through college with no problems. In high school, I think my senior year, I was in the B honor roll. 4 of the classes were shops, so but I still did pretty well. But I'm telling you, offensive lineman, that's the thing, because of college, I love defense. You could crush people on defense. And I could have played both ways at St. Cloud State, honestly. I'm not trying to be cocky, but I could. And I would have been damn good defensive tackle, too. But our offensive line coach here was Dennis White. He played for Utah in the WAC, played for the Chicago Bears. And if you think Schumacher screams and gets intense, you haven't seen anything with Coach Wagner. He came to most of the basketball games when I was a senior. He would come to school every 2 weeks to visit with me. And that pretty much, you got all these coaches throwing this stuff at you. That pretty much sealed the deal for me. He cared enough. And then his wife is a big deal, too. When we were old linemen there, during the week, we'd all go over to their house and sit down at the table and eat spaghetti or whatever. It's a family deal. It's kind of like you see on Friday Night Lights, But that's whatever. But it was a good fit. Our head coach there was Noel Martin. He was a good public relations guy, but he was something else. Sister Suzanne. And my favorite teacher here at Sauk Center was Barbara Bacco, English teacher. She just something about her. She's a great woman. If she could tell if I'm having a bad day, she'd ask me after class what's the matter. And I could tell her, and she'd give me advice. Because when you go through school, there's a lot of changes when you're younger. How to get along with other kids or whatever. Got problems at home or whatever. So she always seemed to help me. I met Coach Wagner. I already mentioned him. And I got a little thing here. A coach is someone who always makes you do what you don't want to do. So you can be who you've always wanted to be. There is no glory in practice. But without practice, there is no glory. And that's kind of what made me click, I guess. If you told me, you're not going to do it, I'm going to do it. And I heard a lot of, you're never going to make it in Division II. Well, keep telling me, because I'm going to do it. I could have played Division I. I know that. Coach Dennis Wagner is still coaching today. He was the head coach at Wayne State, Nebraska. Offensive line coach with the Cornhuskers, Nebraska. Went out to the Carolinas. Head coach at Liberty, Division I. And now he's at a small school, something Bluff, something in Iowa. And he had called me in a while back, and he called a tackle of ours, John Tomavic. He told us that, hands down, the offensive line at St. Cloud State was the best offensive line he ever had the privilege of coaching. He said no Division I offensive line compared to us 5. So I guess that meant a lot. I got to tell you a story, though, when I was a freshman in college. I played in the All-Star game, Coach Mater, yeah. That was pretty interesting. There was a Division I guy that was kind of a cake eater, too, that I beat out. People said you're lucky if you make the kicking team in that All-Star game. So they had all these offensive linemen. I was like 3D. I was fine with it. I was just proud to be there. Excited, Okay, I'm here. And Maynard said to me, keep this between me and you. He's just not doing very well over there. You want to play defensive line? I said, yeah. So we're going to practice a couple of days and we'll see who starts. So the decision was to put us down in a 3-point stance. Whoever wins that face-off is going to start. This kid is 6'6". He's going to the U, full ride. I put him right in his back. And I'm not being arrogant. That was what was in me. And I started it, and I had a really good game. But the best part of it was all the kids that I met, a lot of them that went to North Dakota, South Dakota that we played against. See, St. Cloud State used to be in a good conference. We played the Bison, the Dakotas, the University of North Dakota, Mankato State, Augustana, Morningside, Greeley, Colorado. Then they took that step down, and now you know why they canceled the program. But they should have never canceled it because it was going since the 1800s. But it was a tough conference, and St. Cloud had the chance to step up, but they didn't. So when you go in the Hall of Fame, to me, I had to clarify that it wasn't that junior college conference that they were in. It was the you play the Bison. I'm telling you, it's not easy to beat. I never beat them in 4 years. I almost beat them my senior year. Missed. I was one of Gary Graham's guys out of Browderville. I told him, don't miss this kick, goddamn it. We could have won. I always did that, but joked with him. But it was like a 55-yarder. And we got beat. That's kind of like the damn Albany game we got beat on Hopper. That long pass in 1984. That's the year we should have went to state. And we were at state, but that's the year we should have won it all. Because we had the talent. It was really good. But that game against Watertown Manor, well, that was fun. J.D. Barrett was the running back, and I was talking to, I say Hopper, you don't know him, that's Jim Klopbach, that's my neighbor. We grew up together. And every Sunday we were at Hopper's place, playing football, softball, frozen eggs that we were hitting each other in the heads with in the barn. Watertown Manor, I think that was the best game of my career here at Sauk Center. And me and Hopper were just talking that, and Lorne was, I think, filming. You talked to me last night about it, that I never came off the field. It was insane. I was on the punt team, the punt return team, the kick return team. I was the kicker. Defense and offense, so you could never really catch your breath. I never came off the field. I never missed a play in 3 years at Sauk Center. I was never injured. Never had a concussion, never injured. Even if you were hurt, you didn't come off the field. It's like farming, you don't quit. But J.D. Barrett returned his punt. He was their star running back. And Hopper was to my right, Jim Klopbach was to my right. We're running down the field, and Jim got him by the foot. And then there was two blockers. One went for Jim and missed him. The other one went for, I don't know who was to my left. But it was a full run speed for me, which was about a 4.240. With pads on. I'm kidding. He didn't even see me coming because he's looking at Jim, and I hit this kid so hard. Jim said the two of us, I think it was the perfect hit of your life. Went right through. I think we flew 10 yards in the air. I'm not kidding. Fumbled the ball, we got the ball, and we just scored, so we scored back to back. And they were a way better team than Albany was. I could tell you that. But, it's any given Sunday, you can win, right? That's what they say. You talked about the employment. I don't want to hash through that employment again, being a prison guard. That was a very, very, very violent job. I didn't work at the home school. I worked at the prison. You didn't say home school. I'm just saying there's a big difference between the home school and the prison in St. Cloud. It was very intense. I was stabbed 3 times, numerous fights, 3 riots. And I said to myself, what the hell am I doing here? You can't click your heels and get out of there. Like the movie. So you fight your way out, and I guess I'm lucky to be alive. And some of the, I think the end of it was, for me, it was a friend of mine. It was seniority positions that you got at the prison. I had more seniority, so I got second floor school on day shift. Still dangerous, but he got segregation unit, wanted to go days. And they still let too many inmates out, and was always a concern. So I was on the squad, which is a response team on second shift. And one of the guys that worked with me was Dwayne Bobick, the boxer, if anybody knew who he was, Golden Glove boxer. He was one of my partners. And well, anyways, they had a riot in Sauk. They took over the guards in Sauk. I was second floor school. I was used to it from working this response team. You could hear like something on the radio that just wasn't right. You hear a scream, but not all of it. And I knew it, so I ran down the steps. We were switching out the whole facility at the time. I didn't know where it was, but I looked through Seg and I could see guards laying on the ground. Then my buddy Russ came running up, and we were supposed to wait for backup, but we didn't. So we went in there, and my friend Paul, I ended up going in an ambulance with him and his family. He wasn't in good shape, but that's kind of the stories of what you do after football. One of the things I ended up doing. But my favorite saying in life is, if opportunity doesn't knock, you build a door. So thankfully for my wife, she worked for the guy that owned the business, and Lori bought it, and so Lori's the business owner, and I'm just a manager and helper. I'll make that clear. I grew up on the dairy farm in Sauk Center. I played baseball in Meyer Grove, so I knew all the kids from Melrose, the Wayloggies, the Myers, and the whole works. And actually, don't tell anybody this, but baseball, I think the sport of baseball was my best sport. But I quit playing my sophomore year at Sauk. But I think that I was damn good at baseball. It was so much fun. Al Littmer's your coach, and Meyer Grove, you go to all these small towns. Back then you could sit at a bar. I probably shouldn't say this here. But we were farm boys, You drink a beer, you have one, you go home, you go to bed, right? There's nothing wrong with that. But it's against the rules. And I also, Ole, I want to clarify, track, I got to bring it up. Apparently, you can't chew tobacco in school either. And Barbara Bacco caught me first hour, and she's a good friend of mine. But she gave me a chance, and I left. I was supposed to spit it out, but I didn't, and I came back. And she said, Mark, go see Mr. Beto. Then Mr. Beto looks at me, Twiggy, what the hell are you thinking? So then that was before my senior year. So the next year, I had to join track. And then a lot of the track kids didn't like me because I joined right before the deadline. So I missed 2 events. So I think I didn't even have any technique thrown the shot put. I just threw it. And I didn't really want to go to regions because I was helping Dad put the crops in. So then another weekend came up, we had to go to regions. But I had a lot of fun. An old lineman, I don't know if I read this yet. I'm talking really long because one of the gentlemen I saw last night said a lot of people like to talk. I know he wants to drink beer, so I'm going to keep talking. Offensive line is the only position in all sports where the sole purpose is to protect another player. That's why it's so special. Old linemen just go to work. Period. They just keep pushing. That's why they're usually great men, fathers, and husbands. And that was written by John Strollo. I guess some of my memories at Sauk Center was, I mentioned this to Shuey, and he didn't remember it, but I think it was Mr. Boardman, 8th grade basketball. We were playing 8th grade basketball against Glenwood. And he set up a play, and Donnie passed to me on the baseline. And I was just ready to shoot, and this kid comes off the bench from Glenwood and tackles me before I could shoot. True story. True. I couldn't believe it myself. You only see this on TV. And we ended up winning because that was I'm going to say we won because I hit the free throws. Yes. You see, starting 10th, 11th, 12th grade. Melrose, I talked about playing baseball there. Tony Littmer, if you know the Littmer family from there, I was a sophomore, and I was starting at tackle on offense. And then Berger goes, swag right, defensive tackle. So I go out there, and they're right on the goal line, and I stuff Littmer 3 times in a row, like the 1 or 2 yard line. And that kind of started it. And there's nothing better than getting Tony in the backfield. And then Klopaki it's a different Klopaki. We used to go snowmobiling together years ago out by Meyer Grove and New Munich. Then I think Seattle Seahawks, my agent technically wasn't an agent when I got done with St. Louis. It was Jim Langer. I got the opportunity. He's a Hall of Famer offensive lineman from Miami. He was at all the games. He was one of the announcers on the radio. He represented me. He said, if somebody comes to town and makes an offer, you take it. So I signed with Seattle as a free agent. And that was fun. You go out there, you get off the plane, they put you in the shirts, and you start signing autographs. And that was very special. I think the biggest thing was meeting Steve Largent on the team. We went out to supper with him, all the rookies. Super good guy. I think he's like a representative out there in California now, or a senator. Brian Bosworth was a linebacker there, if you know him. I got to meet him and play against him. I know I missed something, and that was Mr. Bergman. I want to thank you for setting this up, but I also want to thank you for putting Sauk Center on the map as far as championships, girls basketball. You're just a true professional. I watch you on TV, and you're a super great guy. And thank you. In closing, I just want to thank everybody again. And I just hope that I made everybody proud in Sauk Center, representing you in the Hall of Fame or the All-Star game and playing at St. Cloud State. And I want to thank all the coaches again and families for keeping us out of trouble. Thank you.
Again, pass this up, Mark. That's live. You did a pretty good job. I knew he'd let one slide sooner or later, but that's good. You said rein it in basketball? You never did. You broke your hand one year. Yeah, that was basketball. And lastly, I'm glad it was that Bjork kid that was next to you and not Klopaki. He would have had no direction for you either. Where is he here? Yeah. Oh, too bad. Our last and seventh inductee this year, and Shanna, I don't know how to apologize and tell you. You know, you'd think with one girl on the crew, we'd have you go first. But it was Mr. Good answer. It was Mr. Bergman's idea. Lastly, Shanna Schmiesing-Berg. Shanna was a 2007 grad here in Sauk Center. She was also a 3-sport athlete and another athlete that excelled in all 3 of the sports she participated in. In the fall of the year, she played volleyball. She was a 4-year letter winner, 3 times named All-Conference. Her junior year, she was also named to the West Central Conference Offensive Player of the Year. She was a St. Cloud Times All-Area Team her junior year. Her senior year in volleyball, she again was the St. Cloud Times All-Area Team, and she was named All-State Honorable Mention. She also, that senior year, set a school record in volleyball, 2 records, kills in a season and then career kills as a volleyball player. In the winter, Shanna played basketball. She was a 3-year letter winner. Her sophomore year, she was All-Conference Honorable Mention. Junior year, All-Conference Honorable Mention, and she tied a school single-game rebound record. Her senior year, she was an academic All-State, set school records in rebounds, career rebounds, single-season rebounds, game rebounds, and steals in a game. She was named to the West Central Conference All-Conference team as a basketball player as well, and she was named to the All-Tournament team. In the spring of the year, Shanna excelled in track. She was a 2-year letter winner. Her junior year, she was 2-team state second place, and then senior year, West Central Conference Championship team she was a member of, 2-team state second place, 4x400 state placed 5th that year, 4x400 streeter, had a school record for the school as well. She threw discus also for the streeter track team. She was voted 2007 Athlete of the Year here in Sauk Center. And I remember her as a Phi Ed teacher. I did teach a little Phi Ed as well. I convinced the administration we should try a FIAD class where we could get the athletes that really wanted to just push them in FIAD. And I remember Shanna signed up for it. And I want to say but you were the only girl, I think, in the class. And Brent Egan, I remember, was the only boy in the class that would take Shanna on in a lot of the events that we competed in. She could whip most of the boys, all the boys except Brent in most of the events. And we did things like, let's put snow boots on, let's go out just run down by the river and just run around and tackle each other. I mean, she wouldn't back down on anything. We did some unorthodox things, and she was, what I remember most is how competitive she was and was willing to take on anybody. So after graduating from Sauk Center, Shanna attended the University of North Dakota, where she played volleyball. And I think that was probably her true love was volleyball, I'm guessing, and that's why she competed, and it was a 2-year letter winner there at North Dakota. After graduating from UND with a degree in business management, she's now working at Edward Jones as an office administration, in office administration. Shanna currently lives in Moorhead with her husband Ryan and her 2 children. We'd like to lastly honor our inductee, 2019 Sauk Center Hall of Fame, Shanna Schmeezing Berg.
And if you let me go first, I would have told you your belt is really nice. Well, I'm a millennial, so I've got my phone here for my speech. So first of all, thank you to the school board, the athletics department, the Hall of Fame committee, and thank you to anyone else that I might have missed that is part of tonight. Thank you to my husband and family and friends, which is this entire quarter of the room, for coming. I appreciate you being here to celebrate with us. It's humbling and it's an honor to be standing here, and I couldn't have done it without the many people supporting me throughout my high school career. Successful programs are built through a community effort, through community members donating their time and talents to help us succeed. Lauren Tank and Dutch, actually, are the 2 that stand to mind, and you too, Mark, through my years of athletics and going through Sauk Center. Thank you for all you've done through the years to help the program be a success. It's really appreciated. Successful programs are also a team effort. Good coaches, they cultivate good attitudes, hard work, and perseverance. All 3 of my coaches that I had in high school are actually still the current coaches for volleyball, basketball, and track. So I had that benefit going for me for this. So first of all, I had Kelly Werman. She was the assistant coach for volleyball, and then she was also the head track coach when I came in late to the game my junior year. I decided I needed something else to do for the spring, so joined up that year. It was clear all the athletes loved her. They teased her mercilessly, and she simultaneously loved and hated it. Never forget that, going to True Team, both my junior and senior year with them, and then also going to state for the 4x4. A lot of great memories during that time. She definitely pushed me out of my comfort zone wherever the team needed some additional points, whether it be high jump or throwing a discus or shot put or go sprint the 100 and then do the 400 or whatever she needed. I was always happy to help, or high jump. I guess I did that occasionally too. Next is Scott Bergman. When I started in 8th grade, I come from a volleyball family. My few sisters ahead of me, we were all volleyball players. I never played. Other kids started in 4th, 5th, 6th grade playing in Scott Bergman's camps. But I showed up in volleyball spandex, and I very vividly remember being embarrassed to show up to basketball in volleyball spandex. So learned my lesson that first day. So when we first got there, we couldn't catch a ball. We couldn't not travel. I think the first few years that I spent with Scott Bergman, the whole team had to practice jump stops and catching the ball just so we wouldn't drop it. But by the end of my high school career, we had a pretty great team and ended up in the section finals the last at least 2 years, if not 3. Was it 2, 3? Okay. So I like to think that, the foundation you built in those early years when we were there helped to the current dynasty you have. So I appreciate everything you did for us, and thank you. for always teaching me to leave places better than I found it. Oh, Jim Klophocky. You left me with the most memories that I can look back on and laugh and smile at. Jim's first year coaching was my sophomore year. We went through phases of stoic introductions where we weren't allowed to wave to the crowd. We just raised our eyebrows and did what Jim asked. There were practices the year that the movie Miracle came out where Jim had us running killers to the movie Miracle, but he basically was enacting being that coach, I think. I don't know for sure, but Stephanie back there saved us and put her hand up and said, Stephanie Belfi, Sauk Center, Minnesota, and that ended that. There was the time at practice you made me so mad, I can't even remember what happened, but I decided I better go for a run before I went home so I wouldn't bring my attitude back there. So Jim saw me go outside, followed me out there, and he asked me what I was doing. I said, I'm going for a run. He decided to go run with me. I have never run a mile so fast in my life as trying to punish Jim Klophocky for that practice. And it was a trail run, so there were hills, and he came up probably a minute or two behind me, and I just kind of sat there and watched as he came back, and we both kind of laughed about it once he could breathe again. I have so many more memories I could share, but for the sake of time, we'll just go with that. But thank you for helping me stay mentally tough. I know you thoroughly enjoyed giving me a hard time just for the sake of making sure you weren't playing any favorites or anything like that. The word you like to use is moxie. So thank you. I appreciate everything you did. Successful programs are also built by family. So thank you to my parents and my grandparents. Thank you to my sisters and aunts and uncles, cousins and friends, and my friends' family who are like my own. To my grandpa and grandma, I'm not going to make eye contact or I'll cry, who are here with us tonight. Thank you for being my cheerleaders throughout the years and for always being there after the game with a hug and a pocket full of candy. To my sisters, I'm the youngest of 5, so I appreciate that you said that earlier. To my sisters, I was always running behind and trying to catch up to. I've been watching you and doing my best to learn from your life lessons and for sports and for life. Thanks for not letting me play volleyball with you and only letting me run down wild balls that made me hungry enough to be as good as you. Thank you also for cheering like crazy at games. You could always hear where my sisters were sitting in the stands. And finally, thank you to my mom, Diane. Thank you for the times you had to run forgotten practice items like basketball shorts and socks so Mr. Bergman wouldn't get mad at me or Jim wouldn't get mad at me for forgotten items and having to run home before practice. I also appreciate that you didn't listen to the people who probably told you to let me suffer and learn from my decisions. So thank you for always showing up and being there for that and for practice and being at all of the games, wherever they took me. Now that I'm a mom, I don't underestimate how much time and energy that took. So thank you. Thank you again for all the many ways all of you have helped shape me through the years and continue to shape me. And congratulations again to the other 2019 inductees.
Thanks, Shanna. Bergie, is there anything else we left? Pardon? Okay, I will say this. The Sauk Center Herald has asked if those of you that were inducted tonight, if you could all come up here to the front before you leave so they can get a good picture for the paper. There are one of these that Mr. Bergman had put together for each of you to take as kind of a keepsake, put up on your walls at home. And again, thank all of you that showed up tonight to honor these great people. And that's it. Thank you. Good job.